Well, good afternoon. My name is Karen Freeman Wilson, and I'm President and CEO of the Chicago Urban League. We are so glad that you have joined us for our 2021 summit. And we're excited that we have been honored with the presence of Walgreens and Boots Alliance CEO Roz Brewer. We know that you want to hear from her just as much as we do. And so we are going to jump right into this keynote conversation. First and foremost, Roz, I want to welcome you to the Chicagoland area. We know that you've only been here a short time, but your presence is already being felt. And I want to also thank you on behalf of the board and staff of the Chicago Urban League for taking time out to chat with us today as a part of our annual summit. You're in your first 60 days at Walgreens Boots Alliance as the CEO. And we know that not only did you join it in the midst of a global pandemic, but you also joined it during the time that you all are rolling out the vaccine for the COVID-19 or coronavirus. Can you talk a little bit about that and your experience thus far?
Yeah, so first of all, Karen, thank you for having me. This is a nice moment for me to connect with you personally. You and I have known each other over the years, and it's funny how things come full circle and we're back together again and spending this good time together. But, many reflections on these early days for me. This is interesting. I joined this company to really have impact and make a difference on something that's so critical to our community. And the idea of being right in the front line, front and center with administering the vaccine, that alone really charged me to leave what I, felt like was a wonderful career, watching people, helping people make the best lattes around the world. But, this is something bigger and something so much more important. And my early learnings have reminded me what inequities still exist in communities of color. We've been able to do a lot of work around vaccine equity and making sure that we're bringing access to those who normally wouldn't have the ease or the potential to be vaccinated. And so this has been really a different beginning for me. It's highly emotional and one that I have pure dedication for at this time.
We are so grateful for your emphasis on equity. I had the opportunity to attend a vaccine event with you and the mayor, and your emphasis and your willingness to really talk about equity. Quite frankly, both you and Mayor Lightfoot's comments about that are so inspirational. I want to talk a bit because, you are a Black woman who has broken many glass ceilings at Starbucks as the chief operating officer, and now at Walgreens as the chief executive officer. And that means so much to so many of us, particularly those who are in the corporate arena. Can you really talk about, because we know that the fact that you are the first, while it's significant, it's notable because of the lack of diversity in the C-suite. Right. Can you talk about a bit about that and just your thoughts about how we can all contribute to filling that void?
Sure. So, Karen, it still amazes me, even though I'm the one in the seat, that, words like only and first still exist. And, it gives me a lot of energy to think about how can I make that no longer a statistic, right? And who can I tap on the shoulder and how many can I bring along on this journey? But it's clear that it's going to take people like myself and many others to tap the shoulders, bring up, mentor, change, lead, provide opportunity, because the numbers are still way too slim. And, it's also multiplied because, sitting in this seat, you kind of think to yourself, well, who can I call? And who can I talk to? And who's done this before from my purview, right? And so there are many that have lended me a hand and have, sort of broken the ceiling before me. I speak to Ken Chenault and others, Ken Frazier, Ursula Burns. They all are willing to lead a hand. And even some of my really wonderful, fantastic peers in the nonprofit sector actually are really good confidants of mine. But, it's really, there's work to be done. One thing I will tell you is, I have no patience when the comment comes back that, there's not the available talent. It is there. And if it's not there, it's everybody's responsibility to make it, to make it happen. Who are you training and developing? And so every time I get an opportunity to make change happen in this space, I'm pretty vocal about it. Many people know that I'm outspoken not only on the position of diversity, but also leaning over to my peers in the C-suite and challenging them and asking them why their organization looks like it does. And then every chance I get, I make sure I diversify my leadership team. And I've done that continuously throughout my career. And I think it's made a big difference. But more needs to happen.
Can you talk a little bit about your commitment to diversity, specifically equity and inclusion at Walgreens, and how you anticipate that manifesting itself both in the company in terms of who your team members are, but also as you look at your supplier diversity and other aspects of your work?
I'm really glad you asked that question because it is twofold. It's not just who works in Walgreens, but it's also who gets to benefit from the growth and success of Walgreens, and that's our supplier relationships. And there are many suppliers out there that want to do business with us. I would have to commend this organization. If you look at our beauty aisles in our stores, we have several very successful brands that are developed by women of color, people of color, and you see that in our stores. We've done that very well. I think there's opportunities to do more of that. Considering my team and the changes that I'd like to make or see that are happening, there's work going on here at Walgreens. I mean, it's not like we're starting off fresh. I think we need to put a little bit of energy behind it and be very deliberate about how we create a pipeline of talent. The other piece I will say about that is not just putting individuals in the job, it's creating an environment and a culture of inclusivity where people feel like they can bring their whole self to work, regardless if it's race, gender, size, opinion. Diversity of thought is actually the beginning of, creating an inclusive environment. I love the opportunity to put a technologist next to a pharmacist, next to a cashier, and ask them to solve some of the biggest problems, right? And it starts in those conversations, and they see that people think different than they do. And then people think different because of their life's experiences, because maybe they grew up Black or they grew up Latino. And so it starts in so many other places that you can have courageous conversations and begin to create an inclusive environment. And that's really what I want to achieve is inclusivity in the workplace.
Absolutely. And we certainly appreciate that intentionality
Yes.
around that. So let's talk a little bit about Chicago. And of course, we know that Walgreens is actually in Deerfield, which is a bit different from Chicago. But, this is the Chicagoland area, right? And
Yes.
of course, you grew up in Detroit and went to Cass Tech. My roommate from college went to Cass Tech,
Oh,
actually, a couple of years before you did. But I want to talk because we have known each other throughout the years, and you even have a connection to Gary, I might
yeah.
add. But talk about Chicago and the anticipation that you had in returning to the Midwest.
Yes. So that was another exciting factor for me. Chicago feels a lot like Detroit. Now I know the two compete sometimes, but you know that feeling of home, that
Sure.
Midwest hard work ethic. The climate is similar, but the people, that, is something about the people of Chicago that love their community and they
Sure.
invest in their community. You know, I have siblings and family that you could not peel away from Michigan. My family in Gary they've been there for years. There's three generations actually in Gary right now. And so this feels like home to me, and it's very special. The other thing about Chicago is that as soon as I step foot in the city, I just got some of the best calls, and it just made me feel like I'm supposed to be here.
Sure. Well, we can't underscore enough how excited we are to have you here. I'll let folks in on the joke. I always tell people that I'm one of your biggest fans and someone who has always been a stalker, particularly about Starbucks and
Yay.
Sam's Club, because we were always trying to recruit them to Gary. But we are just excited to have you in the Chicago area with all of what you represent and what you mean
Thank
to
you.
so many. There's been a lot of interest, a lot of discussion, particularly with the vice president being Kamala Harris, about HBCUs and her nexus to Howard. And of course, you are a Spelman alum. Would you talk about that and just what that means to you to be able
Yes.
to talk about that connection? You know, my daughter is a Bison, so I know what the HBCU feels like, at least as a parent. But, I know how special it is to those who went to HBCUs.
Yes, it is a very special place. I've rarely missed a Spelman graduation because I've been a member of the board and have actually chaired the board for the last 10 years at Spelman
Sure.
College. And it has really shaped who I am. When I think about my first days at Spelman, I was, being the youngest of five, I was the only one that left Michigan to go away to school. And it brought me to a place where I was very unfamiliar. You know, it's not like the day and time now, like my children who go on college visits, right? So, and there was actually no internet at that time. So, I chose Spelman from a brochure and a recommendation from my high school guidance counselor, Dr. Geneva Carter. She pulled me aside and she said, "You have to go to Spelman. I think you will enjoy it. You'll break the chain of, being in Michigan and doing something different."
Sure.
And I'll be honest with you, I applied to two schools and I got into Spelman pretty late, around the May, June timeframe, and I left in August and I've never looked back. But what Spelman did for me, that faculty at that school, they nurtured me and they really made me feel like you could never fail at this institution. I lost my dad while I was in college, and my exams, I had like, a crazy exam schedule around the time of his funeral services, and they made a way for me to take my exams. Now, the interesting thing is, I was, kind of hoping they'd like give me a pass, but no, they said, "You're going to take the exam. We're just going to pull you aside. We're going to give you a little bit of extra tutoring." But that was that nurturing. That was nothing but love, to be honest with you, that they felt to see me get across the finish line, and they were committed to me, and I felt that. And then also too, going to school with people that look like you and had similar experiences, I think I left that campus much stronger in knowing who I was because I saw myself walk across the campus and around me every day. So I knew it.
You know, that confidence that you talk about, I remember every time I saw my daughter, and I saw her quite frequently because I had a lot of meetings in DC while she was in school, I could see growth. Now
Yes.
she was still spoiled, don't get me wrong, but I could see the maturity, the confidence, the growth that was being instilled in her. And, while they certainly do it on other campuses, I think that what happens at HBCUs is really, really special.
It is.
Yeah. Now
Absolutely.
uh, you're an AKA.
Yep,
Did
I am.
you, and in fact, I told your sorors who are on our team that I would wear my pink in honor of that for this interview. Did you pledge at Spelman?
I did. I pledged Mu Pi chapter at Spelman College, spring of '82.
How
I
about
sure
that?
did. Yes.
Well, congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
they always give me a hard time, but I tell them that I love all of the Divine Nine. Just pay special homage to Delta Sigma Theta. So that's all.
Is that all?
That's all. That's all. Well, we talk about that connection, and certainly there is a Divine Nine connection. Would you talk a bit about? We have an impact program at the Chicago Urban League that really focuses on leadership development for young Black professionals in the civic and professional arena. What type of advice can you give to young Black professionals who are looking to really follow in your footsteps and to excel in the corporate arena?
Sure. So, when I look back over my career, there were a couple of what I will tell you things that I did in repetition. I'll give you an example. There were probably 3 times that I took opportunities that were not promotions, in some cases demotions, some cases where I stepped away from, a financial, promotion, just to really change my trajectory in terms of my learning abilities and expanding my skill set. And so, I came into the corporate environment with a degree in chemistry, and I worked my first 4 or 5 years as an organic chemist. So I'm standing at the bench doing bench chemistry and not really knowing what's going on in the company, right? So I knew I had to change that. So I took a lateral move and moved over to work in sales. And when I did that, I wasn't on the incentive program, so I didn't get the bonuses that everybody else on the sales team got because I was the technical person just going out on calls with them. And I remember my husband saying, so exactly why are you doing this? Right? Because it was long hours, right? And I did it
Sure.
again and I did it again, just because I knew I had to, one, sort of self-teach, and I knew I needed to be an agile learner, and I had to expand and break out. And it wasn't about the money. It was about, you sometimes you cannot put a price on learning. And I learned that very early on. And so when my background began to be much broader than the average scientist, I was called into the business and I worked in mergers and acquisitions, and that changed my whole trajectory. So sometimes it's us really opening up our aperture and thinking about ourselves in a different way, and then being willing to self-develop. And I think that's what's important for us, especially people of color.
Were there any mentors during the course of your career that you were able to sort of cultivate in the companies that you were in or outside of the companies you were in?
Sure. So, yes, absolutely. Inside the companies, it was interesting. Very early on in my career, I was very reserved, I would say, insecure, quiet. And I had different people just kind of tap me on the shoulder because they saw something in me that I actually didn't see in myself. And it probably came through a one-on-one conversations because I didn't like a one to tons of people kinds of conversations. But if I sat next to you in a meeting, you'd hear me talk about things, but I wasn't the one to raise my hand or take the presentation. And those were the individuals that tapped me and brought me along. And I'll be honest with you, very early on in my career, it was white males. And then as I began to see people who looked like me, then they were more people of color. But for the most part, I came up in a time where your mentor was more likely to be a white male. And I learned
Sure.
everything. They taught me how to invest my stock, and what do I do when I'm extended, a promotion? How do I make decisions on what's right for me and my family? So it was both personal and professional mentoring that they gave me, and it has stuck with me for a very long time.
You raise a good point. My first mentor in the political arena, I was very fortunate as a teenager, was a Black female, but the first person who really got me into state politics was a white male. How have your experiences in terms of that dearth of Black female mentors or Black mentors, how has that impacted your willingness to be a mentor?
It absolutely has. I have had probably, some of the best experiences with people of color, males, Black females that have really taken me under their elbow. And it's different because they really get inside your head because they feel what you're feeling.
Sure.
They know they've been there. So when they look you square in the eye, like sometimes they give you that eye when you're having a bad day, they can kind of look at you and tell because it's a
Sure.
lived experience, right? And they'll
Right.
tap you on the shoulder and there's nothing like that. And sometimes they just give you a glance across the room like, you okay? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. And that's that heartfelt saying somebody is loving on you a little bit. And so it's different. And so I've always done that. So like if I'm giving a talk or in front of the room and I see that person kind of coiled into themselves, I might call on them, or as a meeting is breaking up, I'll rush to them and say something lighthearted or something meaningful. But I try and pull them in just so they start using their voice and knowing that they matter. Somebody's watching. I saw you, I see you, I feel you, and I want them to feel counted in. And people did that for me, and it was a game changer.
The ability to make people feel seen is really important, and it's
Yes.
important in some rooms more than others,
Yes.
particularly where there is not as much diversity. In this day and time, there's a lot of discussion about institutional racism, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of discussion about our efforts to really reduce the racial wealth gap. Can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about the role that corporate America can play in reducing institutional racism, and any thoughts that you may have about what contributions can be made?
Sure. So, it's not only do corporations have a role, they actually have a responsibility to take a place in this discussion, especially the ones that are happening right now post the murder of George Floyd, quite frankly.
Sure.
And, many CEOs and leaders are stepping up saying, what can I do? And those that have called me, I've been very intentional and deliberate about, running off those one or two or three things that they can do. Hire people that don't look like yourselves. Be willing to understand that development will be needed because sometimes they didn't get that next job that could have naturally developed them. I always say too that corporations need to partner with, between the public and private sector. What's
Sure.
happening in our government, the way healthcare is distributed in our country, companies and local politicians need to come together on those decisions. I think there's opportunities to, blend those conversations. It's pretty powerful when you can take a corporate leader and someone from the private sector, public sector, and put them in a room together to solve these big problems. I think that's actually the only way that it's going to happen. Influence policy and make change happen in the corporations where you have control.
Absolutely. And, I would be remiss if I did not thank you for the partnership that the Chicago Urban League enjoys with Walgreens. We are honored to be your partner, to have you as one of our corporate supporters. And we really do appreciate the way that you all show up in the community, particularly during this time where folks are really questioning
Yeah.
the role and the commitment of corporations. There's no reason to question your commitment.
Yes, it's a great team here at Walgreens. I mean, they don't need a lot of poking and prodding on this. They're ready to go. I'll help them break any barriers they need, but they're ready. This is a good team.
Thank you. Well, Roz, any parting words for us as we celebrate the summit and talk about leading to equity?
All I ask, for the members of the Urban League is, keep Chicago strong. It's an important part of our country. Look back in the history of Chicago. There are many firsts here in Chicago. I remember when we just opened, when I was with Starbucks and we opened the roastery here, Chicago
Sure.
was the first city that Starbucks came to outside of Seattle to put a Starbucks store in because this community was ready for change. And I think about that, the many times that Chicago has been ready to take the ball and run with it. And I just hope that it continues. It's a beautiful city and it deserves everybody's attention and their focus. And I'm just glad to be a part of it and to be here.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for joining us for Summit. I'm sure we'll see you around,
Yes.
but we are very, very glad that you're here.
Thank you, Karen. It's good to be with you.
Yes.